What's going on, everyone? My name is Blank, and today we are going to be going through Talk to You, the project. It's going to be exciting to sort of show you guys what's involved and how I ended up making the track. There's lots of little bits and pieces. It was super fun to get involved with. Sophia Quinn actually absolutely killed it with her vocals. Great song to write to and produce to. So I hope that this is enlightening for some of you and you get to see like a bit of the ins and outs of how I would make a tune like this. So let's dive straight in. So this is my tutorial. This is my project layout. My templates are usually set out like this. I've got break instruments, break drums, kick, snare, mains, extras, sub, effects, cymbals and drums, vocals, references, and then a mix A, mix B, bus situation going on as well. You can see that all over here. I'm going to run through each one of these as we go, so you'll get a decent idea of what's involved in each. This is just an organizational thing for me, and I find it extremely useful to be this way. I think having a consistent layout and a consistent template is really, really helpful for workflow and keeping things, familiar for our brains. The less we have to think about, the better it is when we have to create, because if we can just create and forget about everything else and everything else is muscle memory, then we will have a better time getting into more of a flow state and all those sorts of things. So having something like this I found is extremely useful for me. But this is the project essentially. You can see what's going on here. We have the start breakdown section, which is all here, that involves all the break instruments, break drums, some effects, and the vocals as well. And then it goes into the drop section, which is nicely laid out here. Everything's nice and color coded for the most part. You can see it. I like having it visually like this because you can see it blocked out, whereas if it was just all over the place, it would be really hard for my brain to like know where everything is. So I find it just useful to have it in this sort of way, in this template, in this structure. So why don't we dive straight in? I'm going to chuck my headphones on so that you guys don't get any bleed. So as you can see, we're going to dive into the break instrumental section here. And this is basically the start of the song. So I've got two sessions. One is the main project and the other one's a mix session. The mix session is where I extract everything into audio samples and then, or audio into audio, and then I mix it that way. I find I get a cleaner result that way, but this is the main project. So as we can start it off here and just give you a listen to what it sounds like in the intro.
Yeah, I know I should go dry my eyes. You're right, I'm too emotional sometimes. Don't laugh, you know I can't keep it cool. No, not like you do.
Cool, so that is the start of the song. And essentially what we have here in the break section is some pads and some pianos. This here is the initial. You can see we've just got a little bit of, it's just a audio render of the piano that would be up here. Sometimes I like just having a little bit more control over something like this. If it's just a little snippet, if I'm going to do some different automation and different EQ and stuff like that, I like to have it a little bit separate. So here we can see that I've got an automation of the Pro Q3, which I could have just done on a normal EQ8 as well on Ableton. That just sweeps down over time, starts off nice and high with a little bit of like a radio effect, and then starts to go down with a little bit of a notch here, and then goes away. Nice and simple. I just rendered that's audio to have a little bit more control. Also got this pad here, which is from Omnisphere. Crystal pipes. A little bit of EQ, just getting rid of some of that low end, and also just up in this mid-range as well. Not doing a whole lot really. It's a very lofty sort of sound. I've got a Valhalla Supermassive on large mix, on full mix. It's called the Great Annihilator. That's the preset, and it's just like kind of floating it out quite a lot. And then once again, getting rid of some of that like mid sort of 600 range to clear out of the way for the piano and the vocal. Just wanted this to be more of an atmospheric sort of layer. The piano is a Labs piano, soft piano, which is what I use on pretty much all of my tunes. It's got some OTT sort of like, I can't remember where I found this, but this is like a general sort of like OTT sort of thing without being an OTT. It's got like these interesting curves of high, low bumps and then missing the mid, and then I've pushed up the glue compressor. Then some OTT after that, an actual OTT, and then some Valhalla Room, which is a reverb on 33% with like a long decay of 8 seconds. Saturator after that, just an analog clip, pushing that up a bit, and then another EQ to pull out those like highs and mid ranges that we were kind of pulling out of this pad. Without it, it sounds like this. So all of that's giving it like quite a bit of atmosphere and space, you know? And then this comes in, which is another Spitfire Audio Labs preset called SynthPads number 4. A little bit of processing on it again to give it some of that atmosphere. Low pad, it's an Omnisphere. Holding Vertigo, it's just kind of giving it that like low, covering that low ground, that low frequency register, and all of it together. Sounds like that, and then we've got bells in there coming in this break section, which is also a Labs. Handbells, which I really like Labs. It's got like this kind of character and tone to a lot of their sounds that are really humanized and really organic, and I love that. Then we add in a bass down here, which is by Legend. It's a cool little 3 oscillator, like on analog type synth. Good for mono sorts of sounds, similar to like a Moog, I think like sub Moog Fatty sort of thing, where it's just like 3 oscillators and it's a lot of mono sounds, really good for like analog sort of basses and stuff like that. This was just an initialized patch that's on like a saw wave that's been filtered down pretty much. A couple of saw waves by the looks of it. I really love the sound of this thing. It's super warm and super analog. We got some reverse piano stuff, which is pretty much just if I put this back the right way, sounds like this. So I've gotten that from somewhere in here. I know I have that little piano trill. Not that, but might be in the drop somewhere. Yeah. Nope. Anyway, I pretty much just put that into audio and then reversed it and put a bunch of delay and room on it to give it another like nice atmospheric sort of layer, just ear candy basically.
Yeah, I know.
Then we've got this other layer down here, which is just a shot of the vocal. Pitched down a little bit and just like grabbed one of the bits here. It's just like part of this word. A little bit of processing on there. These two aren't on, so they're not doing anything. OTT, saturator, some band passing EQ to give it that kind of like radio sort of feel. Some delay, some Valhalla Room, 35%, and like 3 seconds of decay. It's just to give it that little bit of atmospheric vibe. So essentially that's all the instruments in that little breakdown section there. It then goes into, I've got some effects here I've stolen from my remixes of Prey and other things. I like using those because it's nice and simple, especially when you want to get writing down really quickly. And effects are pretty like, you can use them over and over again. We've also got this stem, which is a Valhalla Room. This is an external effect, but basically it's just Valhalla Supermassive, which is a awesome plugin. It's free, and basically just put that over the audio of the vocal and just stretched it the hell out. I think it's the Arizona Bend or something like that. Let me double check again what it might be called. But it's just a preset. If you go into preset and then go reverbs and then go massive, I usually use Benson Arizona or Billions and Billions. Billions and Billions. And yeah, I just get a nice like stretched out kind of effect from that.
Yeah, I know I should go.
So this is the vocal take, and thankfully the vocal itself actually didn't need any processing. I didn't compress it any further. I just gave it some extra EQ to make it sit in the mix a little bit better, and added some reverb on there in a parallel chain instead of right onto it. So this chain is the dry chain with nothing on it, and then this chain is the wet chain with the reverb, and basically just put the mix up to 100%. And it's a big, long, lofty boy of 8 seconds of decay. And what that does is it helps preserve the dry original vocal, as opposed to just like putting reverb over it, which sometimes makes it a little bit washy. This way you can control that a little bit better.
I'm too emotional sometimes.
So nothing super exciting going on in vocal processing, which is kind of nice to get vocals already sort of processed. There are these things in the background here. There's like extra vocal sort of layers in the background. And these are just reverbed, reversed vocals. Nothing crazy there. I think what I would have done is just grabbed a vocal stem, added some reverb over it, flattened that down, reversed it, got some reverb again, flattened that down, and then reversed it back so that it's straight, and then you get this kind of like really reverbed out sort of vocal stem. And then it also got, let me see what it sounds like without this. Yeah, this one sounds like it's just a reversed reverbed vocal and then reverb back on top of it. So it's just like vocal tones, but just really washy. Same with this.
Yeah, I get.
So that's nice to have on top there as well, just like little bits and pieces of vocal. Just to add as like ear candy, which is cool.
And it's like nothing has changed.
And again, no processing going on there, but this is basically just like a vocal double. She's done 2 takes here of the same vocal, and she's just sung it an octave down and then spread them out left and right so that you get this really nice stereo effect. The idea behind doing the 2 audio takes is that you get 2 different sounds that aren't identical. If you get 2 identical stems and then try and pan them left and right, you'll get a mono signal that won't actually be useful for you at all if you're trying to get a stereo image. When you have 2 different audio takes, they'll be slightly different, and what will happen is both of those takes will hit your ear at separate times, therefore creating a it's just the tiny little differences between each vocal take that will hit your ear separately and create this quote unquote stereo effect. As you can see here between so this is the left channel and then this is the right channel. If you're looking at like audio, this is how that looks. And then you can see the differences between the 2 channels, and what that's going to do is, you can see how they're like very slightly differently, but just that very slightly different, but just that amount of difference will create a stereo effect to your ears. Just them hitting slightly differently. See the differences between there and there.
And it's like nothing has changed. I tell you all about my.
So the differences between each take is really what's going to make that stereo effect nice and evident, which is super cool as an extra layer. So moving on, we've got the drums here as well.
Stations wherever I go.
And honestly, this is some of my favorite. This is part of like pretty much my favorite part of producing a song is like creating these sorts of effects. and these sorts of drum grooves. I did this about a year ago, and like I've continued to get better and better and enjoyed these sorts of things more and more as time has gone on. And you can see here it's just like inside this groove basically, which has some EQ going on, which will be automated a little bit. Oh no, it won't. We'll be fine. So it's going to be filtered out that way for the whole part. But basically all it consists of is a lot of different like drum loops and all of these things. So this is a pretty interesting one. I think I've really only used a couple of stems here. So you can see this tune is at 115 BPM. I've gotten a stem that is 140 BPM and like tried to find basically a groove that I thought would fit. This is interesting because this is actually twice as fast as what the overall groove is. So if you hear like this drum groove is actually it's really sort of like, it's kind of playing with like half time as well as double time. So this is kind of keeping that double time feel. And that's what the drum groove is like built from. And it's the same with this. This is kind of like underlying there. What I like to do is kind of like build drum grooves from different breaks as they add in like different grooves, and they add in different like ghost kicks and supplementary hits here and there, and then build a main groove on top of that, or vice versa. Sometimes I'll build the main like sort of kick and snare and hi-hat groove first, and then I'll try and add breaks underneath that. I do 50-50, like both ways sort of thing. Sometimes I'll find a really inspiring drum groove and I'll be like, I want to do something around that. Otherwise, other ways it'll be like, I know I have something in my head, and then I'll build that first, and then I'll try and find breaks that supplement and complement that. So you can hear here just like the way that that's all built out. So you can see as well, I'm not doing a whole lot of processing. This is just one sound. Whoop. That's one kick. And then this is kind of creating that reverb from the stomp. So without this, I'll show you what it sounds like. Let me take off this as well. So these stompy sorts of sounds. And then this, I really love that. That snare is one of my favorites to use because it's so tight and like nice. Now I got another snare underneath there that's kind of just giving it a little bit more oomph, giving it a tail. And a super reverbed out like rim shot. And then we've got an Alon clap, who has some fucking unbelievable stuff. Super helpful and super like fun to play with because it's always usually got a lot of shit going on with it. And that with everything else. You can hear the OTTs kind of going crazy. But with the filtering on, the OTT doesn't sort of, it kind of makes everything more exciting and brings things out, but it doesn't make it like crazy. And then we've got, other EQ there, taking out the low end of this because I didn't want it like kind of overtaking too much. But yeah, there's no real processing going on like super intensely. There's just little bits of OTT and EQ. This is one that didn't get used in the end. That's just sitting there as like a extra little spare thing that I didn't use. So that's the drum groove, and that comes in here.
Lost inside our conversations wherever I go.
We've also got a side chain here, which basically is just the kick, or a kick, that's in time with the beats here on the one, and also this one here as well, you can see.
Lost inside our conversations wherever I go.
Just kind of the main kicks, and what they're doing is acting as a ghost and trigger for a compressor that is on the main breaks group. Super minimal hits, like nothing crazy for this one. But yeah, side chaining with compressor, I'm sure if you don't know about that, you can find out about that really easily. There's lots of tutorials on those around.
Lost inside our conversations wherever I go.
And then we go into the build up or further breakdown section.
Yeah, lost in.
Oops, take that loop off.
Yeah, and it's like nothing has changed. I tell you all about my days, even when there's nothing to say. I talk to you when I get caught up in.
So if we go back into the breakdown section, we've got a new layer. Staccato Synths is by Sylenth, and this is a really simple patch, since what I usually use is just initialize patch, and then I'll go in, create 8 voices on the first oscillator, 7 or 8 voices on the second oscillator, pan the left one left and the right one right, and then detune them to about 11 o'clock on each. Bring up the stereo, make sure that's on full, create the filter so it's a low pass, and then pull out the drive a tiny bit. I'll make sure it's on 24 or 12. 24 is going to make it a little bit more aggressive in terms of how the filter is sounding. And then filter control. So down here, we've got a modulated envelope that will be modulating the filter control. As you can see, the cutoff here, it's similar to how you would do it in Sylenth. In Serum, I just like the sound of Sylenth more. But I also like to cut off A and B, which is basically just like, this is part A and this is part B. So I'm just doing it for both. You could just do it for A if you wanted to. Because this is filter A, and then if you go to here, this is filter B, but I'm not actually using part B, so that's whatever. And then this is how much of the cutoff is being affected, and then this is the decay length, and this is the release, which we don't need a lot of, but basically if you listen to it, so they're all doing separate things, and they are different. This one is not doing the same as this. This is the amount of the cutoff. Say, for example, in Serum, say this would probably be doing about, it would be affecting the cutoff from its default point to about, it's probably to about 5 or 2 o'clock or something. Whereas if I did this all the way, this would be affecting it further down here, right? It would be, all of this is what's being chopped. Whereas the decay is how long of a period, how long of a time it takes for the filter to go from this point to this point, back to default. So this point to here, that's how long that decay is taking. And this is just the starting point you're adjusting. So they're all doing different things. They sound similar-ish, but they're all doing different things. I want to make sure the polyphony is up so that you can play as many notes as you need. These are the notes. I don't like going too crazy. I've been more deliberate with how many notes I use. I'll only use 3, 4, maybe 5 at a time, as opposed to I used to try and layer as many notes as I possibly could, which I found in the end didn't actually make my chords better. It just cluttered them up a little bit. This is a much more intentional and distinct way of creating chords. So it's just really using the notes that you need. And then if you want to go further down in the register, like down here, you can, or you can create a bass, which I already have here. So sorry, not there, but I decided I didn't need a bass note, so I didn't use that octave necessarily. But we've also got the additions of some arps, which is a preset that I am using here, if I take off the arpeggiator, I don't actually need the arpeggiator because I've arpeggiated it myself manually here. That's all going, that's still fine. So yeah, this one has a bit of distortion. I'm not going to roll through this too crazy because I didn't really input this myself. This is a preset, but it looks like it's got a band filter, a band pass filter, and then it's similar idea to what we had before with the cutoffs and stuff. We've also got a bit of pitch modulation or LFO, and it's just pretty much a pluck sound. So similar to what we were doing before. This is part L. That was part B actually. Part A actually has a low pass filter. So there's a bit going on there. Decimate gives you that kind of crushed sound, which is nice. Phaser, really slight phasing, like very small amount, 10% of the dry wet, but it's just giving like little bits and pieces of characteristicness, which is nice. But it's pretty much just arpeggiating the chord here, similar sort of thing. And then same up here. So this is by June. And this is a preset called Fanatica. And it's a nice little like pitched sort of sound. So as we get further on, you can hear the arps start to take place. This one's a much more like straightforward one. This is a 1000 pluck AZ sound, which I really like. So it's just becoming louder and louder and larger and larger. Each of those layers are kind of doing something slightly different that's giving more of a trancey sort of sound. So the bass comes back in this section. More chords, strings, really trancey sort of sound for the chord there. And we've also got these bits here, which are really beautiful little plucks. It's a metal dust bell. I really like that sort of shit. Just adds beautiful little pluckiness, ear candy. Love that sort of stuff. And the grand piano from Ableton is actually really nice. I like to reverb the absolute shit out of it. A lot of delay, and then add a bit of OTT and make sure the brightness is up, the tone is up, the hardness is up, so it gives you that really like you're fucking pressing the shit out of that key. And then you want to make sure that the OTT is after the delay and after the reverb as well, so that it brings out the those atmospheric sounds. It's not quite as epic as, say, this, which is after, which just holds the reverb and just like washes it out just a little bit more, you know? So a little bit more. So then we have the drums, which is much more crazy this time. What do we got? Again, no processing. This is all just sample work. Again, with the Allen claps, whatever it is. Love his stuff. It's really like Foley-esque, and I've just been layering a bunch of different things. So on each clap, it's like slightly different. And then this stuff's got the old Kashmir Stadium clap. I like having one consistent clap and then changing each, and then like, you know, having a different one for the second and then a different one for the different one for the first, different one for the second, and then it's kind of alternating between those two. So you got one consistent, and then you got two different ones that kind of like modulate between each other, right? So that's that. And then what do I got here? Big drums. From a stem from another song. And I've just like kind of grouped those together so they sound like this. Right, and then build up snare. I actually used a Vengeance sample here, so an old school Vengeance sample, and then something a lot more modern sounding, which is my flatline snare, and then couple those together. Another Allen snare for the build up. So for the tricky little automation here, I've basically just gone auto filter. Love that effect. It's always a really fun time, to be honest. Some fun pre-drop effects, just giving it like a little fill, making your own fills out of stuff. This is also a lot of fun doing this yourself. And making sure that the vocals here, I've got the reverb to cut out as the drop comes in, so I'm not like washing out into the reverb, so it gives it a little bit more of an impact. Making sure that this is nice and loud. I've also got a build up verb sort of space that I've created for myself, which is Valhalla Room, OTT, auto filter, utility, and an EQ. Basically that is just getting like this macro one here is kind of automating all of these things at once. So the further that I go up, the more that the filter will come in. It'll get rid of a bit of that like low mid area. The OTT will come in more. The reverb will also like come in more. You see it's just automating those bits and pieces there. And I've also got my gain, which is like automating things so that it's like gives it impact in the right spots. I like bringing it right down right before the drop and then automating it up so it flicks into the drop and then disappears like as the drop hits. So all it together. What I probably should have done is done it a bit more like this. Which brings us, it brings us to the drop. The drop itself consists of kick, snare, main section, sub, a couple of extras, and also cymbals and drums. The kick and snare. The kick revolves around my Kick Prey remix. Which I made myself. Reverse kick that happens once every so often. That's just keeping steady time there. The snare looks like this. Got a little bit of processing on there. Look at that. So because it's hitting on the kick, I didn't want to take up too much low mid sort of room. So what I would have done is kind of pro-cued it out a little bit there. So the main fundamental there, I got rid of it so it wasn't like doing a whole lot and wasn't clashing with the kick too much. So also got this alternating, I've got like the flatline snare. I got an Oliver snare. And I've also got this kind of like Drezzo snare, which has a little bit more of a characteristic to it. So they don't have processing on them individually, but overall, we've got the Pro Q3, which is getting rid of nothing. I don't know what the hell that's doing. Honestly, that shouldn't be on there. Bit of multi-band compression, which is on full, and the time is up full as well. We've got another multi-band compressor, but it is actually going down. So pulling the time that way makes the release shorter. Pulling the time left makes the release longer. So what I'm kind of doing here is tightening the sound up initially and then bringing the tails out with this one. So let me see what it sounds like without those. Kind of just brings it forward all together, like all of it comes forward a little bit more. But other than that, there's not a whole lot going on there because there's nothing on the main group. So that's essentially. And I've also got this alternating like pre-snare thing here, which I actually take away on every other snare. So you can see it doesn't have it there, does have it there. This Raptor snare is doing nothing, so forget that. So that's the kick in the snare. The sub is a Serum patch, which I made. Super simple sine wave, which you push the fundamental up full and then add little harmonics in as we go. So it just kind of like gives it a few more harmonics, so it's not just a pure sine wave. I like doing that. I saw Metric, the drum and bass producer, do it, and I was like, damn, that works really well. And you have a lot of control that way. And then I've also got a saturator on there and then a limiter as well. So it's like, kind of tries to keep it as level as possible, because the different notes will change a little bit, but like in this case, it's not so much. It just really brings up the sound a little bit. So there's that. And then we've also got these cymbals, which is Cashmere. We love that. Super simple here. It's like, I just wanted it to be like quite big. This is actually quite minimal compared to what I usually do. It's just big sort of progressive house sounding stuff. So nothing too exciting there. And then we've got alternating snares there, which is Cymatics open hat stuff. I've made this a couple of years ago now, and so I probably would definitely use something a little bit different and have better hats, kind of bring them out a little bit more, especially that offbeat hat. I would have like probably made that a little bit better tone. As opposed to just like it being really small, probably would have brought it out like and made it longer and a bit more like trashed or something. But this works fine as it is. And then we've got the mains section, which big fan. Really love the way this turned out. It's consisting of a lead group, arps groups, chord group, pads group, bass group. So the lead group sounds like this. This is, whoops. This one is a smooth saw preset that's it's actually in the first thing here, which is great. Actually, no, sorry. This is one that I've found elsewhere. I can't remember where I got these presets from, but essentially it's a square wave that has 5 voices with a pulse wave that has 1 voice. So that's detuned, and this one's not detuned. And then you've got another saw wave there as well. But that's pretty much it there. You've got a little bit of distortion, which is pretty clippy. Giving it just a little bit more high end. Bit of chorus, bit of EQ, bit of delay. So this isn't too extensive. Then OTT hard curve, Valhalla Room, 35 and 7 seconds worth of delay, and then some EQ. Kind of just taming that high, because sheesh, that is a lot of high end. Probably could have done even more, honestly. Next one is a really like detuned crazy out one. So this one's got 8 voices and then 8 voices detuned. This one's actually a noise oscillator. And then 8 voices there, another 8 voices there. So there's lots of voices going on in this one. Just really throwing it out as much as possible to be like detuned and like large, same sort of processing, just pushing it up a little bit. OTT hard curve. This is automating the dry wet. We're not actually driving anything. Cool thing about this is that they're kind of like harmonizing each other. So these two are the same note and then they kind of like change here. We've got a bit of auto pan going on there. I'll get to that in a moment. The cool thing about this whole melody lead section is that there's a lot of like harmonic play going on here. So as we'll go into this patch, this is a massive patch that is super fun one that I use quite often. There's a noise oscillator here that's actually modulating the pitch. So it sounds like this. There's a square wave. And then I'll start adding in like these sort of mini like chord type things with harmonies in them. Sounds kind of weird by itself, but if you add in these, you'll see what it sounds like. So this is the part where it gets like a little more fun and gives that variation, is when this note goes up instead of going down. So you can see here it goes down, see here it goes up. So it sounds like this. That kind of harmonic play is really fun and interesting. Then we've got the arps here. So the arps consist of, again, different patches, all doing separate sorts of things. So one sound, just different sound, more plucky sound, larger, more released, like detuned sound. Altogether, it sounds like this. So I've got some more arps that are also just doing different arpeggiations. So these are going down instead of up. So, and there's also like different timings and shit. So basically I've just gotten like chords and put arpeggiators on it, and it goes down instead of up. Put arpeggiators on them. And they're all just like different patches again. That's an Omnisphere patch. Silence patch. Again, they're all like slightly different sounds, so they're covering different characteristics. And together they sound like this. So it's kind of fun because it's like chaotic and it creates this like really big wall of melodic sound, and that's kind of the aim for what I wanted here, is just make it big as possible. And then we've got the chords. This is just a straight silence patch, initialized. 8 voices, detuned. Nothing else is going on, that's it. I've just got the polyphony up to make sure I can play all the notes that I want. They're slightly different chords. And these are just Omnisphere patches as well. Just like crazy big sounding dynamo trance epic sorts of things. It's just presets. Just trying to find presets that will just be as big as possible. Then we've got pads. Whoops, sorry. These were probably not as necessary, to be honest. Like I really didn't need these in there. These are Labs pads with a bunch of OTT on them and compression and a little bit of EQ. Just basically like filling out sound again, but again, if I put this with everything else, it probably isn't necessary. Like, it kind of covers that low register, like that low mid register, but again, not super necessary, especially when you have this bass section. Serum, we have one detuned saw layer. Go us with hard clip, and then EQ that's actually not on. Reverb's off, filters off, just a saw wave. So boom, easy done. Serum, straight saw wave, no detuning whatsoever, just to kind of give a solid mono signal all the time. Legend, to give it a rounded analog sort of feel. The boogie bass preset. There are so many layers to this song, sorry. Serum, I went and found a characteristic preset, I think, yeah, that I could just use as like an extra little layer that gave it a little bit more tonality that was a bit different to everything else. It was all just sine waves and saw waves and stuff. So this is BA Days by Kashmir. Sorry, Bass Days by Kashmir. You can see what it does, like turn that away. Sorry, I turned that off. So I'll turn it back on. Kind of gives this a little bit more of like a oomph to it, you know, just gives a little bit of something, something. Got the sub underneath there. I've got this extras thing underneath as well, which is just like fill stuff. This is just a bass jam that I made. Sorry, part of a bass jam. And then glitch, tom. And that just happens like every sort of start of every phrase. And then underneath we've got the second section here. Love these little bits of like candy underneath. So if you listen to it coming in. Love that shit. Big fan. Then super crushed, like pretty heavily distorted bit of vocal to fill in the end of the phrasing there. Send out straight to the master as well, so that it didn't get sidechained, didn't get anything. It's just like crushed loud, because it's got to fight through that entire mix. So cool. And then the rest is pretty much the same as before. Just with those added like little breaks and hi-hats on top for that second half of the phrasing. Same sort of thing in the second half of the tune. Let me go over the mixing and mastering really quickly. So what I can do, let me just show you the essentially the mix. So the mix A and mix B thing. The mix A just has, it's a bus that gets the kick and snare sent through it. Doesn't have a whole lot going on. It's just being pushed up by 4 dB. Just so I can like get a little bit more loudness out of it. The EQ8 I actually have turned off these days. I don't really want it doing that anymore, but basically this is getting rid of some of the side information there. But yeah, it just has the kick and the snare coming through, so if I solo that. And the mix B has all of the sidechain information that I want going through. So everything that I want sidechained, I'll send to mix B. And it has it has a little bit of processing here, but only a little bit. So it's 50% multi-band compressor, and then it's got a saturator after it, which is kind of just like being a clipper, acting as a clipper instead of a limiter. And then I've got a limiter after that, which is just catching anything else, which usually doesn't happen because the clipper is pretty straight. And then that gets sent out to the master. But the way that I'm doing the sidechain is through Shaperbox and through this MIDI here. So I send this MIDI to the Shaperbox into Mix B. So you can send it to Mix B and then find the Shaperbox instance that you're looking to use. And then it looks like this. Set it to one-shot MIDI trigger at quarter length. Nice and pumpy. And then that gets sent out to the master, and the master doesn't have a whole lot besides a clipper and a limiter. But again, I have actually mixed and mastered this in a separate project, which is going to be pretty identical though. It pretty much just use a clipper that's on nothing. I'm using a sausage fattener in this one. And it's on nothing. I mix into it as opposed to mixing and then trying to bring everything up. I mix into the sausage fattener or into the clipper that I use, which is not a sausage fattener anymore. And then I have a Pro L after it, which is pushing it up by just 1 dB. It's just squeezing that last little bit out basically. So I would do a little bit more of the mixing like in the separate other project, but essentially this sounds pretty much like how it is in the final master. So that's pretty much it in terms of instrumentation and how I've done everything there. The outro just uses all of the things from before, all of the bits of piano and pads. And then I bring back in the vocals here. And again, it's slightly different in terms of what I use in the actual mix and master project, but essentially this is FabFilter Pro Q3 where I'm side chaining 2 separate and individual bands against the vocal, which is sort of on top of the main. So this main section you can see. It's this one here. I'm sidechaining the Vox Wet sidechain, so I've got this as the sidechain here, which is the trigger basically, and that is what is feeding each of these bands, which is a little bit difficult to explain, but you can go in and like find the specific audio file or audio track that you want to be the sidechain. And then you can go in and find the direct band and go into here, make dynamic, and then you can press this little thing here, and this is the sidechain button. It's really kind of hidden in there, but it's super handy. And that'll be the sidechain. Instead of doing like an entire compressor, you can just like do specific bands, which was super handy because I didn't want to get rid of I didn't want to sidechain the entire sound because that made it too weak. I just wanted to sidechain the specific like bands, which is more in the mid range, which didn't take away too much from the sound, but also let the vocals shine through just that little bit more. So yeah, I hope that is helpful. And this is the project. This is Talk to You. And again, I hope this was super helpful, and I will see you guys in another video. I do have a Patreon that also covers a lot of this sort of stuff. So if you want to check out more of my stuff, you can go there. And I hope you enjoy the tune. Peace.